During the past 2 years, I was living in the city of Stoke-on-Trent, where my work was split between my church ministry and working with a participatory arts organisation called Festival Stoke, which I set up some years ago with a couple of artist friends. For me, both roles were equally my calling to serve God and love people in that city. Stoke-on-Trent is a place where people face many challenges through a variety of problems labelled as multiple deprivation. It is a place where there is good reason for despondency and despair, but it is in that place amongst those people that I have seen glimpses of hope, glimpses of gold even, over the past 2 years. I have witnessed God's love in action in the most unexpected places. When lockdown came early in 2020, we were fortunate to quickly receive funding from Arts Council England's COVID Emergency Fund. This enabled us to commission artists, both locally and from across the country, to produce artworks and performances which would be not only accessible to a lockdown community, but also uplifting. The artists commissioned, including photographers, dancers, ceramicists and street performers, got really creative thinking how they could make work to connect with urban people in restricted circumstances. Most chose to record short movies in outdoor settings, and as lockdown restrictions eased, others were able to display physical artwork in the streets for passers-by to see. One particularly moving installation involved 40 handmade porcelain kintsugi pots with their gold-filled scars. These were hidden around the town centre for people to find. Each contained a card inviting people to take the pot home, and if they were willing, to share their responses on how finding the pot made them feel. The feedback was incredibly moving, as people told us of broken and scarred lives helped find healing and hope. These were literally glimpses of gold in the dark streets. At the end of the year-long series of commissions, we also heard from the artists how the work had kept them from descending into mental despair, and the process of creating had given them hope too. Despite the anxiety of the pandemic, 2020 was a year of beautiful creativity and moments of hope for the people of Stoke, for the artists who created the inspiring works, and also for our team who worked to deliver the programme. Over those 2 years, in the times I wasn't working, I would get out on my bike and cycle out of the city. It took a while to get beyond the city bounds, along cycle paths scattered with the cliché of supermarket trolleys, bottles, cans and old prams. But as the spring moved into summer and the flowers and the leaves appeared in the countryside, each time I went out along the tracks and lanes, my spirit lifted. Hearing the bird song and seeing the yellow and gold flowers appear as the first signs of spring, followed by summer's arrival, sustained me in those days. Being out in nature, feeling my spirit rise and my soul sing, I breathed in the fresh air and raised my face to the bright sky above me. Those bike rides were times of joy, and I was grateful and thankful to God for my bike, the ability to cycle and the wonder and beauty of the natural world. A few years ago, Festival Stoke created a project called Greeningstoke. Run by artists Anne and Rachel, Greeningstoke hosted workshops for local children and adults at which they could create containers to plant flowers and edible plants. The containers were made from upcycled objects such as baked bean cans, plastic milk cartons and pallets. Some larger containers were made from old tyres and even an unwanted filing cabinet. The containers were all painted with bright colours, and once planted up were installed around the town centre of Stoke, where they brought colour and nature into the dull concrete and brick streets. One of the groups that got involved in Greeningstoke was called Wonder Women. Wonder Women has been meeting for a few years as a peer support group for women who have mental health problems, including anxiety and depression, or are carers, or cope with physical limitations, and women who have very low self-esteem that limits their lives. When lockdown came, both Greeningstoke activities and Wonder Women group had to stop. People were confined to their city homes, several in flats or terrace houses with no gardens. But as the months passed, a new idea began to take shape, as artists Anne and Rachel began to talk to me about the idea of taking on an allotment for Greeningstoke. In January 2021, the idea became a reality. The allotted plot was very overgrown with an old greenhouse and a wonky shed, but it was right next to a large summer house installed by the Allotment Association but hardly ever used, a big lawn with picnic benches and an orchard. It couldn't be better situated, ideal for welcoming small groups. For the first months of 2021, Anne and Rachel gave as much time as they could to clearing and preparing their plot, working through the short, cold and dull days of winter into early spring. I created a website and a blog for Greeningstoke Allotment to record the progress being made, and we posted updates on social media so that people would know about it. As lockdown restrictions were eased, it became possible to welcome visitors onto the allotment. To our delight, members of the Wonder Women group came along. Still not able to meet indoors in a group, the women could go to the allotment and be together out of doors, in a space that was both safe physically and supportive of their mental health. The doors of the large summer house were opened so people could sit inside and get some shelter from the chill weather and the rain. The women wanted to get creative again, to resurrect Greeningstoke, so Anne and Rachel provided them with paint and brushes, and they got on with transforming old pallets, a wheelbarrow and wood scraps into bright plant containers and signs for the allotment. They got involved in planting and nurturing too. As spring progressed to summer, lockdowns eased and the women's confidence grew again. Friendships were re-established, new women welcomed, and the summer house became a place for shared meals, using the produce they had grown together. In 6 months, the Greeningstoke allotment had been transformed from a dull and drab patch of land to a bright and vibrant garden full of beauty and goodness, a place where people gathered together to share conversations and support. For the rest of the summer and into autumn, the allotment, garden and summer house continued to be a flourishing and nourishing hub. And one Saturday in the autumn, the Wonder Women welcomed friends and family and other allotment holders to a shared autumn harvest meal together. The allotment has provided a place for friendship and creativity, and it has been a delight and inspiration to witness the positivity it has brought into the lives of those women and their family and friends who have been able to visit. Since the end of 2021, the Greeningstoke allotment has continued to expand its horizons. The local manager of the social prescribing scheme has visited and asked if she can refer people. The Wonder Women have asked if their sons could come and join in the gardening. And so, as a response to that, Greening Fridays as a regular event has been added since the start of 2022. The soil plots are prepared, the seeds are planted, and the seedlings are beginning to grow. When I look back over the past 2 years, I am grateful to God for the glimpses of gold I have seen, sometimes literally, during a very difficult time, for the beauty of art and nature that have sustained me and brought hope to myself and to others.